Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Sacred Souls podcast. I'm your host, Mariel Heather, and I am so excited to be back in action. I was MIA for a little bit because I had done my second mushroom journey, which is what I want to talk to you guys about in this episode. I've been traveling a bunch, obviously. If you're new to listening to this, I am a full-time traveler and nomadic, and I put my stuff in storage back in January. And I've just been traveling around with my dog to wherever I feel intuitively led. So I just want to briefly share where I'm at with you in my life, on my travels and all of that. The last time I did a solo episode was in Vegas, and that was like professionally recorded, and I loved the experience and all of that. But honestly, I kind of love this more because I just feel like it's more real, and then you can see a little glimpse, a little snippet of where I am each time. Unless you're listening, then you won't see anything, but for those of you who are watching it on YouTube, you will see. So yes, my life is ever evolving, and I'm just trusting. And so since Vegas, I went to the Pismo Beach, San Luis Obispo area. And then from there, I went to a town in Northern California called Auburn. I was there for like a week. Then I went to Nevada City for a week for the mushroom journey. And then after that, I was now I'm here, back in Orange County. I'm in Newport Beach. So that catches you up to date. Next week, I'm actually going to Hawaii. So I'm going to try to record an episode there because I think that would be magical and so fun. I'd love to just share a piece of the energy of Hawaii with you guys because I just love that island so much. This episode is a raw and real share from my most recent mushroom journey that brought me major clarity. And this was my second time doing it. If you missed the first time, I talked all about it. You can find it in my episodes, either on YouTube or streaming. So what led me to sit with mushrooms again is just the fact that the first time I did it, it was so life-changing, and the impact and the effects and the rewiring was so permanent that I was like, okay, how can I not do this again? And also, since I can be kind of a control freak and a planner, the first time I didn't really know what to expect, and now that I knew what to expect, I'm like, okay, now I can go into it with like a different plan. And of course, you can't really like completely plan because the mushrooms will decide ultimately what they think is best to work on, or like what is most relevant in your subconscious and all of that. But still, I felt like I was going into it now with just not so much of a beginner's mind, and I really wanted to now take things a bit deeper. So the way I do it is I do it with this one woman who is a facilitator. It's just me, her, and my dog. And we go into it with an intention. And first, we have a bunch of sessions beforehand because we really want to narrow it down and talk about it and get really clear on what it is that we want to either heal or release or just kind of, go into. So I did go into it this time with a few different intentions. Last time I only kind of had like one, I think, but this time I had a bunch. But I'm like, all right, I really need to narrow it down here. And so the intentions that I had, the first one was about my gut issues. I've been having issues with my gut for the past 9 months, and I'm always like try to be so open with you guys. And the only reason why I hadn't shared it with you guys yet is because I really wanted to find out the answer and like how to fix it before I shared, because as a Virgo, I like to share a complete story. And I know that's maybe not the best thing, but that's just what I wanted to do at the time. So I hadn't shared it. So with that being said, that was one of the things that I really wanted to get some clarity about because I had literally tried everything. And again, I will get more into that in this episode. And I also wanted to just get any clarity on like anything future that they wanted to tell me because, I am traveling nomadic, and part of my intuition, what it told me was to not have such a plan, which is fine, but also, any guidance or clarity or anything that they wanted to give me, or just anything maybe that they thought was holding me back from being like the best version of myself and being on the highest timeline and all of those things. So those are my intentions. But again, when you go into it, it's really just not in your control, and you just kind of have to surrender and to trust. Okay, so let's get into what happened during the journey. So this journey was completely different than the last one, like 100% different. And not that I even thought it was going to be the same, but last time was so emotional and emotionally intense. And a lot of people, when I tell them about it, they get scared, like, oh, now I don't want to do mushrooms because I don't want to go through all those emotions. But to be honest, the reason why that was so emotional for me that first time is because I was not someone who was in touch with their emotions, and I wasn't an emotional person at all, and I really repressed a lot of things. And so that's the only reason why that was so intense, is because it was finally all coming up to process out. But if you are someone who is in touch with your emotions and all of those things, then it probably wouldn't be like that for you. And also, your experience, there's no way your experience is going to be like mine no matter what, even if it's good or bad. So if you are interested in doing mushrooms, like, please don't be afraid of like anything that I say, because first of all, it wasn't scary. It was just more uncomfortable because I don't like to face my emotions, or at least I didn't at the time. But just know that like whatever is, best for you and whatever you can handle, the mushrooms know. And the whole point of it is to be healing. Like, nothing about it is leaving you traumatized or anything like that. So just know that if you do go into it, it's not like something bad is going to happen to you. So a question that I get asked often is, how much of the mushrooms do I take? So the first time I took only 2 grams, and to just put it into context, my facilitator told me that 3 to 3.5 is actually like a full dose, but I didn't want to do a full dose. And also she was saying that because I connect all the time and I'm so intuitive and I meditate and blah, 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 like it is probably easier for me to tap in without needing more necessarily. So I only did 2 the first time. And like, of course, that was more than enough. Like, we definitely did everything we needed to do and accomplished everything we needed to accomplish. So this time she told me to tap into my intuition and to see what dose I wanted to take this time. And I immediately tapped into my intuition, and the numbers that I heard were 2.3 to 2.8. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe they mean like 2.5 because that's in the middle. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with like that range of numbers? So at first I thought 2.5, but then as it got closer, I started to get a little bit nervous, and I'm like, I don't know, should I take more? And of course, my logical mind was getting in the way, per usual. And I'm like, all right, maybe I'll just do 2.2 because I like those numbers. So we start the process. I take 2.2, and I go into it with my eyes closed, which, by the way, is something else that a lot of people ask and that they think is crazy, but your eyes are closed the entire time. I mean, you can open them if you want, but if you do, you're going to stop, like whatever is going on, because the whole point is it's an inward journey, not outward. And your eyes are closed and you're listening to certain music that she's playing. I mean, she's not playing it personally, but it's a playlist, and that is activating different scenes and visuals and messages in your mind, body, spirit. So I start the journey, and all I see are bugs. Like, of course, again, in my mind, all I'm seeing are these bugs in soil, and it's just like constantly different bugs. Like, first we're seeing these bugs, then we're seeing the next bugs, and this is just going on for like, I mean, I have no concept of time when this is happening, but it seemed like at least an hour, at least. So I'm looking at these bugs, and then I'm starting to get frustrated and kind of worried, because I'm like, okay, last time when they would show me different things, it's like there was a lot of momentum, and I wasn't stuck on a scene for so long, and everything was just like moving and grooving. So this time, the fact that I was stuck on these bugs for so long, I'm like, something is up. Like, I'm not sure what, but something is up. So in my mind, I just started to get like very frustrated, and I'm like, okay, are the mushrooms not working? Like, I feel like I'm being blocked, like what's going on? And this is not what it was like last time. And so I get into this like frenzy of frustration and anger and concern and worry. And so then I open my eyes and I'm talking to the facilitator. That's why she's there, for support and guidance. And I'm like, I'm stuck. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, it wasn't like this last time. And I know it's not always the same, but like, there's definitely something is up. And she was like, okay, well, why don't you, she's like, I think we should take more. And I'm like, also, side note, this is important. Last time when I took it, I felt a little bit nauseous in the beginning, but then that passed, and I've, found out that that's normal, that like the mushrooms can make you a little bit nauseous, and like it can go in waves, but it was nothing like crazy or anything like that. But this time, just as soon as I took the mushrooms, like maybe 10 minutes in, my stomach started to hurt, and I started to feel really nauseous and just like really sick. So that was going on the whole time. So once she told me that I should take more, I was like, well, are you sure? Because I already feel so sick. And she was like, yeah, because you need something to push you over the edge. Like, I could just tell that you're fighting it for like some reason, and like you're way too mentally here right now. And so she's like, you need that extra boost. And I'm like, are you sure? And I started going on all these things. I'm like, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And she's like, trust me, like there's a lot of variables it could be, but she was like, ultimately, I like for my expertise, like I think you should take more. So I'm like, okay, fine. Like, how much more? And she said a half. And so I'm like, oh my God, like to me, that seemed like a lot because then we're almost at 3 grams. And so, but of course, at that time, I was thinking, like, all right, I should have listened to my intuition because my guides had told me between 2.3 and 2.8. And, like, maybe if I had listened to them in the first place and not decided to, like, do my own thing, maybe we wouldn't have been in this position. So we take more, and then I go back into the journey. I have my eyes closed and all of that. And finally, the bug scenario starts to evolve. And they start showing me and talking to me about my gut issues. And so it gets revealed to me that this whole entire thing with the bugs and all of that, that was related to them talking to me about my gut issues. So they start to tell me that all of the bugs represent death and not actual, like I'm dying or anything, but they just mean old, like everything old. And so they start telling me that when I was living in my apartment back in Orange County, that I was literally living in an old identity, and they were just telling me that like everything around me was dead. And of course, again, not literally, but just the fact that it was a place that I lived for a long time that I actually didn't want to live anymore. And so they were like, you know, you kept living there, and a lot of the people that I was hanging out with and the situations and circumstances that I was surrounding myself with, they were definitely old identities and just a lot of things from the past that I was not releasing. And I wasn't necessarily like seeking these things out, but I wasn't doing anything to actively change it. And it's just really interesting because all of my gut issues started back in July. And that was exactly when I started to feel like, okay, I am living in an old timeline. Like, I feel like I'm living in an old identity. Like, I literally said that so many times. And I've even made videos about this on my TikTok and Instagram. So if you go back to July, you will see there are specific videos I made talking about that. And so what I didn't realize, though, is that that actually was causing my gut issues. So just to give you some context, I'll explain to you what the gut issues were. So basically in July, just overnight, one day, I was eating and I was just like really bloated, and I never ever get bloated ever. And this was bloated, like I literally looked like I was 8 months pregnant. So I was like, okay, this is not normal. Like, what's going on? And I went for a million tests. I went to a naturopath. I went to the regular doctor. The regular doctor I only went to like once because that was quickly short-lived from our differences of seeing things and testing. But they didn't find anything. Okay, I am back. If you are listening to this, this means nothing to you. If you're watching this, it might look a little bit different because I had to leave for a little bit and now I'm back. So it was daytime and now it's evening. Okay, so as I was saying before, I went to the regular doctor, well, a GI doctor, and we did not agree with the testing, but even the testing that he did do, everything came back totally normal. He couldn't find anything. And then with the naturopath, there were some things that they found, but they basically found a little bit of a bacterial overgrowth in my gut. And so I was taking all of the supplements for that. It was to the point where I was almost taking like 100 supplements a day. And I was doing that for 8 or 9 months. And so the naturopath was saying, like, literally all the things you're taking should be like, your gut should be amazing. And that's another reason why I knew, like, the whole time I knew that there was something deeper, because just as a spiritual person and all the work I do, I know that, like, even if something is coming out in the physical and manifesting that way, there is always like a spiritual and emotional component to it. I just could not figure out what it was at the time. You can imagine this was really, upsetting for me, and it really was impacting like my quality of life because it was so frustrating. Like, I'm also such an active person. I work out all the time, and it would just look like I didn't. Like, my whole body would be inflamed, and it just got to the point where I realized that I could not eat gluten or sugar. So that was, pretty restrictive for me. So that's how I've been eating this whole time, is just like nothing processed and just like really clean. And obviously that's good for you, so that's fine. But, sometimes you want to just have like a piece of chocolate or like something fun, and I haven't been able to. So now that you know the backstory, back to the mushroom journey. Okay, so as they were the mushrooms, when I say they, it's the mushrooms, as the mushrooms were showing me, me back in my apartment, and they were showing me, you know, all of these old identities that I had been holding on to, and they were just basically showing me how much that I was making myself stuck and that this was manifesting into my body. And they basically told me that I am someone who, like, if you're, they kept calling my environment a dead environment. And so they were like, if you stay in a dead environment, then that's what's going to happen to your body. Like, things are going to start happening to it. And it's just interesting because they made me reflect on some things that, like, for example, when I got breast cancer, that had to do with my environment. And I don't mean like mold or, you know, like physical environment in that sense. It's more like energetically and emotionally. So that happened, and then that was obviously like the most major significant thing health-wise that had happened. And then, but it's interesting because then after I had breast cancer, right afterwards, like after my cancer surgery, I had moved into this apartment in Orange County that I hadn't even really seen before I moved in. And so I didn't love it, but I was like, okay, whatever. Like, obviously I'm focusing on cancer, so I don't really like care about the apartment right now. And it turned out that I got toxic black mold poisoning at the time, and I had to immediately move out of that apartment. And again, like I told you, like I didn't even like that apartment to begin with, and it wasn't a good fit at all. So it just, like, they were just showing me, like, look how your body reacts when you're not supposed to be in places, you know, and like living in certain places and environments that don't suit you. Or, I mean, when you think about mold and fungus, like, what does that represent? It represents things that are expired and done, you know. And so that's why it's like you have to look at like each thing and see like what it represents, which is something that I've always helped people with, like including myself and in sessions and all of that. So I've always found that stuff so fascinating. I just didn't know that I was actually going through it once again. And so I had lived in Orange County for a while, and then I had moved to Sedona for 6 months. This was a few years ago. And at the time, something kind of traumatic happened to me and my dog, which I will maybe talk about in another episode, but not this one. And so I had to move immediately. And when I did, I didn't know where to go because it was like so immediate. And so I ended up moving back to Orange County because I was like, okay, this is what I know. So I moved back there again, and then it still didn't feel right. So after a year at least of living there, I went on a nomadic journey. If you guys follow me, maybe you remember, I went on it for 3 months, and at the end of 3 months, I felt very frazzled. It was like a completely different journey than it was this time with me living nomadic. And again, I didn't know where to go because I felt frazzled, and so I ended up moving back to Orange County to literally the same exact building that I lived in because I just did not know what to do. And I felt like really pressured, and, you know, because I was like, all right, we need to make a decision like right now. So they just were showing me like, look how many times you keep coming back to the same place. Like, some of the places were like the exact same place, but most importantly, it was Orange County, and that is an old identity for me and an old place. And that is like what they were harping on just so much. Like, they were like, get over it. Like, you're not going to live there. And I already knew that, which was why, like, intuitively I knew to go on this nomadic journey, because I'm like, I just knew I couldn't stay there any longer. I didn't know why or anything like that. And I didn't know where to go, but at least I knew enough to just start this nomadic journey, which I'm still really liking, and I'm happy that I'm doing this. And they were even telling me that even having a home in itself was an old identity, and not that like having a home forever, like that can't be an identity ever again. They're just saying at the time, like, that was an old identity, and that it's really good that I did go on this, you know, nomadic full-time travel journey, because that is actually what was needed. So I actually was in alignment in that regard with my intuition and like my soul's plan for me at the time. So then the mushrooms were telling me about my purpose, and they were saying that one of my biggest purposes in life is to show people how their environment affects their body. And I just thought this was so interesting because, again, this is something that, like, I always think about, like, whenever someone's like as a client or a friend, like, they tell me they have a physical, like a health issue or even pain somewhere, I'm like, okay, where is it located? Let me figure out like what chakra it is. And like, I can tell you, I can reverse engineer it and tell you like what emotional or spiritual or energetic thing is, you know, causing that. And, even like in a session, I can go deeper and figure that all out in more detail. But it's just interesting because they mentioned that, and they were saying how I have already shown people, like as an example of how our environment affects us health-wise with getting breast cancer. But they said that not everyone has cancer, so not everyone can relate to that. But they said that I should share my gut issues because they said that a lot of people can relate to that, and that's what's like very much needed right now. And it's just interesting because I always like try to share everything with you guys, and the only reason why I didn't tell you guys about the gut issues is because as my Virgo self, I'm like, I mentioned this before, that I wanted to have like a complete plan of like beginning, middle, and end and tell you like the full story. But they were like, no. And they even told me, they're like, well, we are clearing it now. So I'm like, all right. And so I am starting to share this with you guys. And I even like know, and I'm going to create some offers where I know that this could help you guys like so much, because again, this is something I was already doing in some of my sessions, like a lot of them. And so now that they kind of shifted my focus and showed me like how much this is needed, and I literally lived it and experienced it firsthand several times. So now I am so confident that like I like can help you guys with that, and it makes so much sense now too. I'm like, all right, that's tracking. Another thing that I want to mention that they said, because I feel like a lot of people can relate to this, is I'm someone who is so future oriented. Like I never focus on the past. I don't live in the past. If anything, like I know that I'm too much, in the future, but to me, I'm like, okay, I'd rather be that way than like living in the past. And something that they mentioned to me was that I'm so future oriented that I don't actually sometimes process the past, and that is the issue. And that was part of the issue of why I had this bloating, is because certain things happened in my life and I just moved on without actually processing it in the best way. And I mean, think about it with like your gut, that's where we digest things, it's where we process things. So that is just like another thing that makes sense, that that's where this issue would start to manifest in my body. Also, during this entire journey, I felt really sick. Like I felt so nauseous, and just it really took a physical toll on me. Last time I didn't at all. Like it was more emotional and like me crying, and just felt like so emotionally heavy. This time, no emotion, just more. Everything was in my body. And one of the things that they were telling me is that I'm someone who is so much in my mind. And they were like, you need to be more in your body, because look what happens when you're not. There's like that disconnect. And of course I know that logically, and I help other people with that, but sometimes, it's easier to help other people than yourself. So it was just something that they helped me like reprogram, rewire, and heal and release. And so I'm definitely going to be more in my body going forward, and just try to balance out that mind-body connection. I did ask in the journey about some future stuff too, and they told me some things, but nothing that I feel like at this point is worth sharing. The main takeaway was, just about everything with my body, and just how we need to, if we're holding on to old identities and old timelines, it can affect us to the point where we actually get physically sick. And again, this is not the first time this has happened to me. So lesson learned this time, hopefully. I will be more aware and more tuned in and listen to my body. I mean, because it's just funny. I knew that I was living in an old timeline, and I knew that this was like an old identity. It's just that I did not do anything about it. And so I think the lesson too is like, take action instead of like, at least just do something. Because even the fact that I went on my nomadic journey, that literally like right when I left, the bloating started to get a lot better. So even that shifted energy, like it shifted the energy. So I just feel like this journey confirmed what my body had already known for years, and what I intuitively knew, but I just did not make that connection, and I did not put that together. Okay, so here's some takeaways for you guys. Overall, your body is your compass, and if it feels off, definitely trust it. Being sensitive is a gift, and I think it's how we stay aligned. Start tuning into environments more deeply, like who you're around, where you live, and just the energy of your home, because all of these things are going to tell you something. And I'd love to invite you to check in with yourself and just see if you are, living out any old versions of yourself. Okay, so here is how I'm integrating everything now and what's been happening since post-journey. They say with mushrooms, the journey itself is kind of like the catalyst of everything, and it is where like there is the clearing and all the information and the guidance and all that stuff. However, they do stay in your system, and it's kind of like it happens in layers. And that's why they say to space out the journey, like you're not supposed to do them like every day or like every single month. And so, because like it needs time to integrate. And to me, like the integration process is actually more important, almost more important than like the actual journey itself. And so, since the journey, I've actually had some very interesting dreams of like past relationships and past things that have gone on that are definitely being processed out. And I feel a million times better about that now. And next week, I'm going to Hawaii. I already had that planned before this, but I think that Hawaii to me is always like such a healing place. I try to go once a year, and I just feel like that will be such an amazing place to just tune in more with nature and integrate everything and just see what juicy downloads come through. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm creating, as we speak, a new freebie for you guys that has to do with this and some more offerings. And I'm putting together actually a workshop series that I'm so excited about. So I really hope that you guys will join me whenever I launch that, which will be pretty soon. If we learned nothing else, do not stay in old identities. And I think this just shows how important it is for our mind, especially body and spirit, to keep things flowing and to not be stagnant, because like look what happens when we get stagnant, like it will show up in our body. And when we don't process things, like the body, I know it sounds cliche, but like the body always remembers. And I know there's that book that called The Body Keeps Score, but it's so true, because clearly look at like with my breast cancer and with toxic mold poisoning and now the gut issues, which by the way, so just to complete the story now, ever since the mushroom journey, which was a week and a half ago, my issues have been so much better. Like they're not completely gone, but they are almost gone. Like I stopped, like the second I was done with the journey, I'm like, I'm not taking any more supplements for a while. Like I want to just take a break and see what happens. And so far so good. So I'm really excited about that, and I will keep you guys posted. And if you have any questions or anything like that, please, I'm always here. Like, please know that you can reach out to me. Thank you guys so much for listening or for watching, and I will hopefully be recording my next episode in Hawaii.